Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I bought quite a few apps this year, as if that's anything new. But I've just put on the screen a list of the apps which I've acquired during the year, and it got me thinking, if I was to sort of narrow down all the apps that came out this year, which had the biggest impact on my music or my workflow, what would I choose and why? So I thought, let's have a look at the top 5 apps which I feel made a big difference to me this year. So the first one we're going to look at is called WebSDR. WebSDR is an AUB3 plugin. See, software-defined radio is just basically when you can link a computer with a device with an antenna. So from that computer, you can then listen to all sorts of different live broadcasts. Now, that could be commercial radio, and that's available in some places. You can get things like bleeps and bloops from various computers talking to each other and military stuff happening. There's also sort of consumer band radio where just random people are just chatting, and that's really where I found the benefit for WebSDR. Now, I'll show it on the screen at the moment. It's listed as it says £5.99 there, and this gave me the opportunity just to grab different samples which I could then pull into my music, which moves me away from just using synth sounds and nothing else, and just gives something to add texture. You go into it, you pick a station to go and listen to. Let's go to one of my local ones within the north of England. We'll turn on the audio. Actually, before we do that, let's take the volume down because it may well be very loud. There we go. And it's just a matter of looking within the app and seeing where there's radio frequencies being broadcast. So if we And the thing to bear in mind with WebSDR, and this is one of these things that a load of people were crying about, was that it's not instant. You've got to work. There's no guarantee when you go hunting for something that you're going to get anything that you're going to be able to work with. But actually, that's part of the fun. If you go in with an open mind and just think, well, let's see what we can find, you end up with random stuff like the Call for April samples. So you can see there's quite a lot going on in this project, and the vast majority of it are synthesizers. Got, well, three tracks which have got my vocal chops on from the WebSDR. So if we just get this going, this is some radio static from WebSDR. Just some general noise. We're bringing in AU Gen X, which is just making some more noise just to add to the ambience. Here's the first sample.
I'd say it's that time of year, but it seems a bit cool for April now, doesn't it?
And the track carries on from there. Now, what I want to do is just have a look at that Call for April sample. And all I've really done is put a bit of EQing on it, put some delay and put a bit of reverb on. Just to give it a little bit more space to sit within the track. If we go on to the Tomatoes one, again, I've added some reverb. I've actually boosted it with Beef just to make it sit better in the track, and used Haze 2 in order to move it around in the stereo spectrum. So if we just sort of scroll over to this section here.
My little tomatoes are growing in their tray in the conservatory, and I'm not going to put them outside yet.
One of the issues you get with taking samples this way is it's not clean audio. You've still got to work with that. It's just one of those things. You know, there are other avenues if you wanted something really clean and pristine. But actually, by the time you've added other stuff around it, it doesn't stand out as being sort of dirty sound as such. So that's how I've used WebSDR. So the next step I'm going to look at, which made a difference to the way I work in 2021, is Riffler. Riffler is $9.99. That's US dollars. I know it shows pounds on the screen. It's actually slightly cheaper in the UK because of the way the App Store's changed recently. what does Riffler do? It creates copyright-free guitar riffs. So you can put in some basic parameters, hit randomize, and it will go away and create something. So let's go and have a look at it. So you come into Riffler and you get a reasonable selection of presets that give you something. So what have we got here? We've got rock heavy. You can then hit create and it will generate something. So let's see what we've got. Now, where this is useful that I found was that I struggle to write music with guitar lines in because it's just not a genre that I'm particularly familiar with. But what Riffler can't do is replace a guitarist, and it's never intended to. It's to throw up some ideas, and it might be that it throws up an idea to a guitarist who then can jam along and then go, okay, I'm going to do that. Or it might be, as I say, my case scenario where I want to write something with a guitar line in, but I don't really know where to start. So this was not in the No Emis project. This was actually one of the Sci-F projects, which was the song Parasite, which came out in September. So let's zoom over to that file and see how it was used there. So again, the Parasite Cubasis project is, as usual, complicated. I mean, essentially, the first two tracks are the vocal takes. Track 3 is the Riffler output, because Riffler can create its riff, and you can either output the MIDI and then shove that into a guitar app, or you can use its internal engine and output the WAV file. Now, for my purpose, I wanted to create a guitar filler track so I could build a song around it. This track 6 here that I've got muted at the moment is actually the live guitarist. Now, I asked my friend Kev Hart of Metal Shack if he could turn the idea which came from Riffler into something that a proper guitarist would actually do. And yeah, he smashed it out of the park. We'll come back. We'll come and have a listen in comparison to that. What we'll do is start off by hearing the track with Riffler doing its thing. So it's actually quite competent, and it certainly gave the feel for what we were trying to do. The downside with it was it doesn't understand things like ending of songs. So when we actually get to the very end, it basically just stops. So if we just go to there. So it sort of loses any sort of level of authenticity with that. But as I said, the whole point was to create something which I could then give to a live real guitarist to actually use a real instrument. So if we go back to the beginning, and what I will do is I will swap in and out of these two tracks. So that's where the power is. It gives somebody who's not a guitarist the opportunity to pull something together which a real guitarist would be able to work with and go, okay, I know what that's doing, I know where it's going, so put your synths away, let me get on with it. So great job from Kev, really good fun track to work on, and it really made me able to do something which prior to Riffler I wouldn't have known where to start. Okay, so my third app, again, is another instrument, and this is the Swam Cello app. Now, Audio Modelling have been porting across all of their desktop audio modelled instruments. They've just recently done woodwind. They started, I think, with brass, and they did the strings in the middle. It's a very accurate interpretation of how a how the instruments actually work, and you get far more control, far more so than when you're working with the sample. Because the problem with the sample is that it's a recording, it's something that's fixed in time, it's something which the player that was sampled did on the day, and although it's very realistic within the sample itself, it doesn't necessarily follow that when you start doing other things with that sample, it wouldn't necessarily be how the instrument will behave over sort of many notes rather than just a single note. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's not so good. It's not a cheap app. It's nearly $29. It does go on sale down to about $20, but what you're paying for the craftsmanship in actually creating such an accurate instrument on the App Store. And if you actually go into the app, you've got controls, so your pitch bend, you've got your vibrato. I'm going to try and get this on the screen here. Play around with the expression, and again, as I say, using pedals and mod wheels, you can actually interpret with the cello. Let's talk about where I've used the cello. So here we go. So you could see within that the expression was wobbling up and down there. That was being controlled by my expression pedal. You can't actually see the vibrato on this on the screen that I've got at the moment. I was just spinning through just to see if I could find it. But again, that was controlled by the mod wheel, and that just allowed me to, normally when a string player is playing, where they get to hold a note, they've got a chance to actually hold its dead set, or they vibrate the finger on the string to get a vibrato within the string, and the instrument makes it really simple to do that. And so you're putting that on when it would happen, as opposed to within a sample, a fixed time. So a really, really amazing instrument. When we come to the second part of it, I then started adding things like guitar pedals. My fourth pick for 2021 is Pure Piano. It's again another premium app. It's showing as $25.99. It did come out at an introduction price, but I think it's stayed pretty much at the full price since. And again, what do you get here? This is unlike the SWAR instrument. This is sampled and takes a different approach to the equivalent premium pianos which are currently already available on iOS, i.e. Ravenscroft, and then there's I think it's the Ivory Model D from Korg. They're all really good. I mean, I use Ravenscroft and Pure pretty well interchangeably, but they can do things in a different way. If we look actually within the Pure interface, what's different about this is that you have presets which are not just sat there as an individual thing that you can then tweak, but you can actually morph between them. And depending on where you bring your cursor, you can really so you can get a very subtle blend. Now, compared to Ravenscroft, you can go in and tweak a lot of the different parameters to really craft your own piano sound based on the samples within it. But if you don't want to do that, and you just got to, certainly if you're putting a piano within a track rather than sitting out on its own, it's more the feel of a piano that you're trying to get. Now, again, I think the danger of being a classical pianist is that when you know an instrument well, you're a lot pickier about it. I think some of the cheaper pianos out there will do for a lot of people, but when you're actually really sort of dialed into how a piano reacts and how it sounds, then some of the more budget options just don't cut the mustard, and like your included pianos in your DAWs may not really hit the spot. When I did the review on the channel about this app, I did comment that one of the things that sort of drives me mad is that they've tried to include key noise, but without the opportunity to actually dial it back if you don't want it. And it's one of those sort of it may be realistic, but just because it's there doesn't necessarily mean that you want it to be there, and you might be trying to get rid of it. That aside, it produces a nice piano sound, and again, you can blend between them. So what I'll do now is I'll jump across back into Cubasis again, and we'll see how I've used this year. Okay, so the best example I had for using the piano is actually purely as a piano piece. I did recording of The Arrival of the Queen of Sheba by Jeff Handel. So let's have a listen to it. So this first one's got a little bit of brightness in it compared to the standard. Left hand of the upper part is slightly less bright, but that's the direction away from the standard. The right hand of the lower part, I've made it much less bright because we don't want it shouting over the main themes above it. And then the bass part, the left hand of the second part, again, is set in the middle. But the advantage of having this gradual morphing screen is that you really can dial in quite easily the feel that you want for your piano. Now, is it perfect for all cases? No, definitely not. And which is why I'm happy to have both this and Ravenscroft, because they both bring different things to the parties, and I will use different instruments for different use case scenarios. But for something like this, where I just wanted to have a nice balanced part, which wasn't too shouty or too funky or anything like that, pure piano really hit the spot for me. So again, another great app for the year. That's my fourth of my top 5. Let's do the final one. Paul at 4 Pockets is probably one of the most prolific and inventive developers out there on iOS. I mean, the number of apps he's come out with is just astounding, given that he's one person representing 4 Pockets. He's done all sorts of different effects apps. He's done some instruments. He's done samplers. But Neon was the one that stood out for me this year, over and above all of his other really good ones. It's currently $10.99. He does have sales on all of his apps at different times, so it's well worth keeping an eye. But what Neon does is vast, and I'm only going to touch on a small proportion of that today, because I only really use it as an audio editor. Now, the built-in audio editor in things like Audio Share is good for starting with, but it's fairly limited. But Neon just goes way further. Now, when I was recording my From Beyond the Light in March, and then a Digital Delusion in October, but when I got the files out of the DAW, if there was a long runoff, which sometimes you get with synths sort of just ringing out very quietly in the background, but you end up with a tail that's 6 minutes long on a track that was otherwise 3 minutes long. In order just to really make sure that it was cut down and faded in and out properly, I was going onto Audacity on the PC and just manipulating it there. And one of the other things I did in Audacity whilst I was at it was checked the LUFS levels, because that had a function. And at the time, there was nothing on iPad that could do that. Now, Neon has that within its immediate features. As I say, Paul has done lots of really good tutorials and explores all the clever clip launching and warping and everything else. Stuff that so far I've not needed to use, but it's amazing to know that in this one app, it can do some really stellar things. So it's opened up with an audio file, which is actually, I think it's Jealous of the Angels. I'll not play any of it because it's copyrighted material and I'll get a claim on the video. But essentially, within the app, I can go in, I can slice it up. You know, you can select a loop, you can zoom in and out, you can add a whole variety of different effects to it, level of auto-tune in there, you can declick, you can change your gain in it, there's generators in there. But also, if you go over to the Neon button, you can not only measure the LUFS, which is within the track, so that's 12.96. If I wanted to adjust that, which again, prior to this, I could only do on the PC, you can go into the set function. Let's set it to the -14, which is sort of your agreed standard for most of the streaming platforms. It will go away and adjust it as close as it can. And then you can just save it all off. And that's all been done on the iPad. So from the point of view of just slightly more than simple file editing, Neon's got you covered. But it does so much more. It's got all sorts of different warping, so you can change the pitch without changing the speed, or you can change the speed without changing the pitch. There's so many options in here. It's such a deep app, and Paul keeps developing more and more updates to it. And yeah, it's, I would say, one of the most important apps of this year, just for what it can do and the fact that he's still developing it. There's currently nothing else as deep as this on iOS, to my knowledge. And again, for the entry price of $10.99, it's astounding, really. So another stellar app. So yeah, that's a little bit of a winding video today. I also wanted to talk about some of the apps which have made a big difference to me in my production. Now, depending on how you build your tracks and what type of music you do, you may well have picked different apps which worked for you. And that's great, because there's been so much coming out. What's not to like? And again, whilst yes, I think the prices of apps are gradually creeping up now, compared to desktop, they're still very, very cheap. As a platform, I love working on it. I love producing music on it. I have no need to look at anything else, because everything I want to do, I can do on this amazing piece of glass. And yeah, the apps keep coming. No doubt 2022 there'll be a plethora of more apps which come out and hopefully make things even better going forward. So I hope that was interesting. I hope it was useful. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, leave a comment. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe. All these things help the channel, and it means that you get alerted for when I do produce more content. So at least one more video I've got planned for December, so that will be coming out hopefully before December is out. But as always, thanks for listening and watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care now.